Okay, so I'm going to start the next episode of Losing Touch with Reality. It's the second book in my series, Life Beyond Silence. And the first book in my series, which is Not a Victim, a Survivor, Life Beyond Domestic Violence and Rape. I have already done that podcast. The book is on Amazon as well as other places like Barnes and Nobles. It's an ebook form and paperback. Um, the second book, Losing Touch with Reality, I am doing the podcast. I feel like the podcast gives me a different avenue, and I'm trying to do them, all three books, in order, more so than having published them the way that I did. The second book I have not gotten up on Amazon as of yet, but it's only because I just never completed the process to upload it to Amazon. I guess I'm kind of hoping the podcast gives me a fresh look at the three books in the series. And of course, you're welcome to make comments or ask me questions, and I will do my very best to answer them. I have had a lot of hardships, but I can honestly say a lot of my hardships, if not all of them, were brought about because of the choices I made in my life. I made mistake after mistake, and I've always thought if I could just go back and change things, but you can't. If I could, there's a million things I would have changed. I just seemed like I just kept digging myself a bigger hole. If it was not one man after another, it was one costly mistake after another. And in the process, I was dragging my kids through things that you just shouldn't do. And I take ownership of that. I think I was struggling to try to build what I had envisioned a good life to be, and I was searching for something that wasn't out there. I just was trying to put together a life that I obviously was just never meant to have. I think some people, like myself, that make one mistake after another, we view it as these are the cards that were dealt to us, and things just haven't gone right. But now, after all the years that I've carried around guilt and pain and guess I've just hurt so long. I can honestly say that I don't blame anybody for my mistakes. I caused a lot of my own pain and agony. And there's no going back to fix things. If you make mistakes in life, sometimes you just have to take ownership of them and find peace on your own. You know, there's a lot of people that have judged me over the years, most of them being family. And I feel like that I can't make them give me a chance to put it behind me. They're never going to do that. They decided a long time ago I was just a fuck up and was never going to do what was the right thing to do. And over the years, I've just accepted that. You know, I can't, I don't have the kind of support system that forgives. I think for the most part, some of the people in my family have forgiven me, but my mother has never accepted or forgiven, or however you want to label it. I think my dad, for a long time, never put it in the past. At this present time, after years have passed, I think he pretty much has. I think there's a lot of hard feelings that I caused that I can't ever undo. But I think over the years, I've forgiven myself. I've made peace with what I did or what I didn't do. I've just made peace with it. I made a lot of mistakes. And you can sit there and say all the woulda, coulda, shouldas that you want to say. Like, I should have done this, or if I'd only done that, or maybe I could have done this, or what if I had have done that. But it doesn't change anything. And like I said, I blame myself because I made the left turns when I should have gone right and the right turns when I should have gone left. Anyway, to make a long story short, I finished my first book. The second book, which is what you're listening to now, is a continuation of my life. There had to be another chapter. There had to be more. And I guess the second book tries to answer that. What happened? What happened after Kentucky? What happened when you went to Louisiana? What happened with Bill? So, in this episode, we've already been to Louisiana, and we've already come to the point where we're moving to Huntsville, Alabama. And I pointed out in the last episode that I have a lot of time missing in my life. I can't explain it. It goes all the way back until when I was a child. I remember things, and I'm good at piecing together my life. But there's times that I was so, I guess you would say, despondent, that I just didn't, I guess you would say I just closed it out. You know, I can tell you we had good memories in Louisiana. We had some bad memories. Phil's mom died of lung cancer. We argued about him playing paintball. We lived paycheck to paycheck. Walker had killed himself, and that gave us some breathing room. When we decided to move to Huntsville, Alabama, he had a friend there. He felt like he was going to be able to easily find a position to drive a truck. He had also heard by his friend that there was an active paintball place and that he would flourish with that sport. And to be honest, I had never heard of paintball when he got into it, but I quickly learned quite a bit about it. He was on a squad that was not pro, but they were doing really well. It was big for him. He thought of it, yes, as it's a hobby, but he thought, in a sport basically, but he thought of it as something that maybe he could grow into something more. And I guess in a way it did, because he ended up being a manager for a paintball field, and he didn't own the business, but he knew the ins and outs of paintball, and they hired him to work there. And so he was kind of, I guess it's kind of simple to say, it's like gamers when they play games and make money off of it. For him at the time, and this was like back in the 90s, but for him at the time it was like doing something that you love day in and day out. I get that. You know, everybody would love to do that. I went back to doing nursing, Um, I worked at a um, medical clinic, pediatric medical clinic, um, for a hospital owned clinic. I also eventually got a job working for a company that owned several nursing homes, um, basically throughout the East, and enjoyed that position as well. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So, when we first got to Huntsville, Alabama, I would say for the most part we were looking forward to what our future held for us. I had made arrangements for us to move into an apartment. Um, we had a truck full of our belongings. We had driven all night, just like our trip to Louisiana. We had done very much the same thing going to Huntsville, Alabama. And our children, my middle daughter, my youngest daughter, and my son, who was growing by leaps and bounds, all of them were. We, you know, this is unfortunately what my life has been like. You know, you just pick up and you just start over, and I had moved several times by now. So here we are in Huntsville, Alabama. We get into our apartment. It was a nice apartment. It was decent. It was um, everything that we would need for 3 children and 2 adults. We moved into an apartment, and I can tell you that it was a very trying time. Um, there was a lot more cost than I had planned on, but we were doing okay, but it was trying because Phil was trying to get to work, find a decent paying job, and he was still truck driving at that point, so he was just going to drive a truck and deliver whatever he could get. And my kids went to their schools, and I was looking for work, and I was taking care of my children and taking care of bills and trying to piece together our lives. And at the same time, we were hoping to travel back and forth to Kentucky more than we had been able to in Louisiana. And we did. We traveled back several times to see my family. And so that my oldest daughter's siblings could see her. We had a birthday party we had um, I would say a lot of challenges to get through. After all, I was still with Phil, and it was difficult. Um, I can't tell you exactly what went wrong, but we were fighting, and there was it was a trying time, and we had talked about just getting out of the relationship that we were in. Um, I can't tell you how broken I was, but I can tell you that I went out a couple of times with two different people, and I told both of them that I didn't know what the future held for me. I wanted stability. I wanted more than what I had ever had, because everything I touched seemed to just crumble. My marriages, my life choices, everything had just crumbled for not only me but for my children. And it's weird how life is, but it was just not the right time for me, and I think I knew that. The one guy, he was very nice, listened to my story, very supportive, very sweet, and literally I met him and we had a good conversation, and he was a prison guard, and he literally up and died in a freak accident right after we had met. And I was still with Phil, and he knew that. And it wasn't what you think it was. It was more so just somebody trying to tell me it will get better. And if I chose to leave Phil, that maybe I could be with him. But I wasn't ready to do that. And then he literally was alive one minute and dead the next in a freak accident at the prison. And it kind of, I guess you would say it was like a lightning bolt. I felt so horrible for coming into this guy's life and not really knowing that much about him, but then finding out that he had passed away. It was sad. Truly, truly sad. But what are you going to do? Because nobody knew me. It was like a thing I cut out of the paper, and I still have it to this day, just to remember him by. The other guy was, to put it simply, he reminded me of a very smart, articulate, warm, nice man who had never had the opportunity to marry. He was a lot like my Uncle Larry. He he wasn't heavy, but I didn't mean that. He was just one of those types of people that maybe never met the right woman. And he was very smart. He worked at NASA, and he was charming. And we talked about, again, if I left Phil, maybe there would be a chance for us. But I just wasn't ready. Again, I just couldn't do it. I mean, Phil was the guy that I had met in Germany and became totally in love with. I should have seen red flags. I should have never even got with him. All of that is true. The fact of what he did in Kentucky was enough that I shouldn't have gone to Louisiana. That is true as well. But I did. And here I was in Huntsville, Alabama. We'd not been there long, and we were what it looked like splitting up. And it also looked like it was in the cards for me to go back home. I wanted to, but the thing was, when you're in a family that's dysfunctional and that is going to only see you one way, they're only going to see you for your mistakes and for the basically they're never going to get past that. And when you're in that kind of family, it's not that you can't go home. It's not that these aren't your family. And it's not like when you reach out, it's not as though they're not going to come. Of course they're going to come. I have children, and I definitely give them props for not wanting my kids to suffer in any way. But the fact that I suffered, the fact that everything I did crumbled and made me look more and more like a fuck up. I'm going to stop here. I tend to get a little long-winded with my podcast, and I don't mean to. I just get carried away, not only reading what I had previously written, but it's kind of like just talking to a friend. I get carried away and add pieces and bits to the story that you won't find in the book. And I tend to keep the podcast going far too long. So I'm going to stop here, and I will probably do another short one and try to get that up as quickly as possible. Losing touch with reality is going to be a longer podcast than my first book. And I really couldn't judge right now what the final book in the series will be as far as length. But I can just foresee this one being a longer podcast than the last. I tried to kind of even them out, but now with the way that I'm doing the podcast and trying to add some commentary that wasn't in the actual books themselves, it looks like this one will be a longer one. At least at the present time it does. But I am going to stop here for right now. I really appreciate everyone that's listening. Please try to understand that me telling my story is a way that hopefully I can reach out to people that are struggling through their own hardships and making their own I guess I would say digging their own holes. I just want people to know that life throws a lot of things at you. Whether you're in a domestic violence relationship, whether you've been raped, whether you've been living in a family that's full of dysfunction, or whatever you're dealing with, alcoholism, drug addiction, whatever. But you can get through it, and you can survive it just like I did. And in the end, you can make peace with it. I still go back to thinking about what my therapist said so many years ago when she said that I was in charge of my destiny, that it was up to me to change my life, not anybody else. And it didn't matter if I had a family that was dysfunctional. It didn't matter if I had been raped. It didn't matter what happened to me in this cruel world. Because the world is cruel. And bad things do happen. But she said, you are not weak. You're strong. And you can pick yourself up and you can change your life. And I don't know, she just like reached into my soul and said what I needed to hear. And yes, even though she said that, I made a lot of mistakes. I will admit that. And that is true. I did. And all those mistakes just snowballed over the years. I get that too. But no matter what has happened to me in my life, I always kept believing things had to turn around. You know, they always say it's the darkest before the dawn, or you'll get to the lowest part in your life and the only thing left is to go up. Well, truthfully, some of that might be true, but you can get really, really low and you can dig a hole that seems like it is all the way to China. It's just that deep that you're almost breaking through the other side of the world. I mean, I guess I kind of make it over dramatic when I say things like that, but it's true. You can really screw yourself by making bad choices again, again, and again, over and over and over. And I did that. But I can honestly tell you, even after years of doing that, you can just someday come out of the darkness. And you can say to yourself, okay, yeah, I screwed myself. I made all these bad mistakes. But I'm still here. I survived. And I'm going to change my life. I'm going to make the best of what I have. And I'm going to put all those bad memories and choices and mistakes and pain and agony, I'm just going to put it on a shelf. Because you can't change or undo what you did. All you can do is put it on a shelf and own up to what you did. You don't have to own up to it to anybody else's standards, but you can own up to it to yourself and realize, I'm not doing that no more. I'm not making any more bad choices. I'm done. I just want to live out the rest of my life peacefully. I just have to put everything to rest and make peace with it and keep trying to get up every day and just focus on taking one step at a time. That's all I can do. I can't change other people's minds. I can't make the mistakes go away. I just can try my best to take care of me. My kids are all grown now. They've all got lives. They're all doing well. And basically all I have is me and my little dog. But I'll get through this. And I did get through this. And I survived. And you will too.